co-host with me today, Aunt Wanda.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again.
And we are officially at episode 9 of Gem Talk. It has been an adventure.
We're going to celebrate next week.
We're going to celebrate next week at episode 10 for sure.
Yes.
But today we have a very, very special episode. This is actually a two-parter. This is part 1 of 2. And we're going to be discussing today, I don't necessarily want to say we're discussing police brutality because I think it's so much bigger than that.
Right.
But we are going to discuss how to prepare our kids and not just kids, how to prepare one another, how to be as informed as we could possibly be as we venture into these streets, especially now that the weather has broken and it is nice outside and we know what happens when the weather gets warm. And just to kind of assist us in the conversation, we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Shafar Jeffries. Am I saying it right?
Yes, you got
Shafar
it.
Jeffries.
You got it.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
So go ahead, Wanda. You're going to introduce our special guest today, please?
Yes, I will. So I met Shavar, I guess, maybe about 2 years ago?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
About 2 years ago, doing work with Sophia. And but today, Shavar is a civil rights attorney in Newark. And I want to... I'm going to read a little bit of his bio, and then I'm just going to kind of do a really brief overview because we want to really kind of take our time with this and kind of unpack it as best we can.
Yes.
Also, if you are, please make sure that you go to YouTube, jerseyfreshtv.com. Make sure that you subscribe so that you can hear the caller when they call in. Okay, so right now... hold on a minute. Okay, here we go. I'm going to... Listen, let me just say this, okay? Shavar is an extremely passionate and very articulate attorney, but also just a social justice advocate. So while his focus may be on education, he's also a partner at, hold on, I'm going to read this. Shavar has been recognized broadly for his social justice work. To name a few, he's been honored by the NAACP, the National Bar Association, the Garden State Bar Association, and the Congressional Black Caucus, KIPP, New Jersey, and the Essex County Family Justice Center, among others. He is also a partner at Lowenstein Sadler, and he continues to reside in Newark with his wife and 2 children. As you will hear, he's extremely passionate about education, and I think that the two kind of go hand in hand because, like Fran Lee said, that's what we want to talk about today.
Yes.
is being informed.
Yes, so let me just start by saluting you. Thank you for the work that you do in and outside of the courtroom, in the streets, with the children. We appreciate that, especially a man of your hue.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
A man of your
Thank
hue.
you.
And I don't know if we can zoom in on his T-shirt, Newark versus everybody.
Yes.
All right.
Stands up, Essex County.
North through and through. Uh-huh.
So Mr. Jeffries, can I call you Shavar? Mr. Jeffries?
No, Shavar. Absolutely.
Okay, so Shavar. So as we know, let's just go ahead and dedicate this show on the top just to all of our brothers and sisters that we have lost to gun violence at the hands of officers within the past year, within the past 10 years. We know a lot of these cases have happened. For example, the Philandro Castile case, that's a couple of years old now, and it still resonates so deeply with so many individuals. But we just want to dedicate this show to them, and we are hoping to empower enough people to begin to minimize these numbers because I feel like they are just at an all-time high right now. We know that just in 2019 alone, 425 people have been shot and killed by the police. So how do we arm our babies? How do we arm them to go out into the world? And, as we spoke prior to the show, they can be going out and doing what they think is right. They could respond in a way that they think is appropriate and still not make it home on that day. So where do we begin?
Yeah, well, first, thank you all for having me. I mean, I love what you're doing, and providing information and insight to our community is a blessing. So thank you both for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's 2 levels. I think the first level is for our children and even our adults too, to recognize what I know we know, but it's always important to affirm it and honor it and recognize it, which is this has nothing to do with us. It's rooted in racism, it's rooted in racial stigma, where too many people, including sometimes ourselves, don't see us as amazing and as beautiful as we are. And they see us through the lens of racial stigma. And of course, racial stigma was used as a justification for slavery, right? To say we're not human, we're animalistic, so that slavery is where we ought to be, right? That was the whole rationale for slavery. And so one, understanding that this is really a disease of those who have, racialized lenses through which they view the world, including us. And again, some of us have that too, right? Some of us see black folks, see people of color, and then have the same sort of thing. So number one, knowing that, because sometimes our young people can internalize racial stigma and they begin to think less of themselves. And think even if it's in an unconscious way, they deserve to be treated as less than, deserve to be treated in this otherized manner. So I think that's number one. Then tactically, there's a set of things that I think we have to think about tactically when we're encountering police who have a legal right to kill us if they can concoct a certain sort of pretext for it, that they were afraid, that they were fearful. And remember, the way stigma works, people are already inherently fearful of blackness, right? So they always have that to say, I was afraid. And so what that means is we shouldn't have to do this, but this is the reality because we want to get particularly our babies and our adults out of that encounter, and then we can deal with them legally after we get out the encounter. So because we have to assume whether particularly with a white cop, but even cops of color, that when they see blackness, they're more likely to think it may be a dangerous situation. So we have to kind of go out of our way to act in a way that can defuse and de-escalate. Because even the slightest provocation, when you couple it with racial stigma, they can be quick to shoot, right? So, for example, they come, officer, may I ask what I'm stopped for? You really technically don't have to be deferential, but we really need to be given the challenges we're dealing with. Make sure your hands are visible at all times. Do not move your hands while saying, officer, may I move my hands I want to get my license now. I'm going to go grab my license. Is that okay? I'm going to get my registration. Is that okay? I'm going to get my car insurance. Is that okay? Don't reach for a brush. Don't reach to tell your son in the back or your daughter in the back to keep quiet. Let your hands be visible at all times. At the same token, if you can see their badge name or you can even get a number, you can do that. You may not want to ask for that because then they can get antsy. Now, you have a right to all that, but we have a lot of rights that we know just don't work in the real world. Because we're focusing, we just got to get out of that encounter. Let me see the badge number. Usually their badge number should be on, if you get a ticket, should be on that too. But if you can kind of take a look and see the name, that's something to keep so that if later on we feel it's unjustified, we can deal with it later. But the key is to really work to defuse the situation so that they don't have any sort of provocation that might cause them to act, in a rash manner.
So is this basically kind of instilling in our kids just this notion, even if it's not in their nature who they are, to be, because it almost sounds like they have to go out of their way to be articulate and approachable and easy on the face, kind, not have a demeanor that looks intimidating, which some people have naturally. So is that part of like the home training?
Well, I think it's like, as black people in this country, we oftentimes have to learn how to code switch because I think it's very important for folks to understand this is just something we're going to do for the 8 to 12 minutes of this encounter, right? This isn't us. This isn't who we're trying to be. We shouldn't have to be this way. But if I think about my son or my daughter, they're 14 and 12 now, I need you getting past these 8 to 12 minutes. Then we'll deal with all this in another type of way. Okay. Right? So we don't need to fight the whole struggle in those 8 minutes. I want to get you out of these 8 minutes. And then we have other mechanisms, right? We have litigation we can look at. We can organize and advocate with government. We can push the police director to diversity. We can do a lot of different things. But I think we got to say for these 8 minutes, we got to get you up out of there. So for these 8 minutes, you shouldn't have to do it. It ain't right that you have to do it. You may not feel comfortable. This is what we're going to do.
Have to do.
So, just, be King's English and all that. Both hands on the wheel. Don't move those hands without asking for permission first. Everything you're going to do after you get permission, say, okay, now, officer, you said I can get my driver's license and my insurance. I'm now going to get that, right? Do all of that. Then when we get out of that encounter, then we can go from there.
I think that is so, that's just so key, is having to, what did you call it?
Code switch.
Code switch. And I think that,
Well, anyone who's worked in corporate America knows how to do that.
Right, exactly. Hello, thank you for calling Chase. This is Wanda speaking. I may help you.
That work voice.
Yes.
That voicemail.
Yes. Absolutely. And then I get off the phone. Like, what'd she say? But I think that that's definitely part of the conversation that people don't like to do.
Sorry about that.
Right? So they don't want to. And when you see some of these videos, especially because we're watching it over and over and over again on social media. And so what begins to happen is, we think that if we get stopped, we're going to be the one that's going to change it. Like you talked about in that 8 to 12 minutes. Well, I've watched all these videos, so I'm going to do this time, and I'm going to be different, and I'm going to be the one that's going to change it, that's going to make it look different. And you're not.
Right.
You're not going to be the one that changes it. As hard as it is to just even accept, it is what it is right now. This is the climate that we're
we live in.
And the bias is very real.
That's right.
It's the stereotype. And one thing I want to just mention before we get back to Shavar is that, they're talking about racism and these are racist actions, but I think that there's a difference between a bias, and a stereotype, right? So I'll just give an example because I like to dance, right? So my stereotype, right, with white people is that they really have they just kind of move around with no rhyme or reason to the music that they're hearing, right?
Don't worry, y'all. We're gonna tie this back in.
I'm tying it back in. No, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now. Now, if I stereotype someone that's how white people dance, that doesn't mean that I'm racist. Mm-hmm. But if I go to a club, I may stay clear of them. I won't want to dance with them. I won't want to deal with them. So if you have a police officer who already has, like you said, the stereotype, the bias, they're afraid, they're unable, they don't know how to react in that. They don't know how to navigate our blackness and our loudness and we just want to be heard. They don't know how to navigate that. They take it as an attack on them.
Right.
Because generally we just want to be heard.
Right.
We want you to know that we are valued.
That's right.
Because we're watching you in other venues and other forums or whatever kill us and brutalize us. I mean, you walk up on us with your taser.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you put it, So we just want you to know. Wait a minute, we're not. So we're just trying to talk, but even that is considered a
threatening.
threat. Right. Even that is considered because of the bias. And because of the stereotype.
Yeah. And what we do know is that if an officer has reasonable apprehension of an imminent threat of serious bodily injury or deadly force being imposed against the officer or somebody else, that they are justified in using deadly force. But we see that even just with the terminology. We see it when they just feel threatened as opposed to there actually being a threat happening. Right. So what is the law behind that? How do we escape unscathed?
Well, the key is we have to, and on top of that, the courts are very liberal in how they determine the reasonableness of the officer's perception.
Yes, we see that
right?
in these cases.
So again, what we have to do is in that encounter, we have to conduct ourselves in a way where to minimize the extent to which they can try to concoct a reasonable, predicate, reasonable basis to use deadly force. So again, you see my hands, right? You can even say if you want, officer, I have no weapons. I have none of that. You see my hands. What do you need? What do you need? You need my license? You need my insurance? I'm going to do that, right? Keep your hands where they can see them at all times. A nice, easy, calm voice. Let them do what they got to do, whatever they got to check, and then you get up out of there. Now, again, to be clear, and I'm sure we'll get to some point, there's a lot of other things we can do. I'm not saying we accept this. I'm saying that 8 minutes, we got to get you up out of there. But then if it's, depending on where it is, we got to organize. We got to diversify the police department. We need new training. Right, because officers should be trained. Really, the civilian shouldn't have to do all of this. The officer should be walking to that car, assuming this is just an ordinary situation. And officers are supposed to have a specific reason to believe that the deadly force may be used, not that they are presumptively already in an anxious sort of space. But we know as black people, that ain't our reality. So for those 8 minutes, we got to de-escalate. We don't want them to have any sort of reasonable basis at all. Although, frankly, just our skin is enough. Right, so we know that. So we have to kind of go out of our way to be in a very frankly, deferential sort of posture, which none of us like. But again, it's just for 8 minutes. And then after 8 minutes and 1 second when they're gone, now we're going to get into some action so that we can minimize this going forward.
Now, I know we've all seen all the footage, basically, because I feel like every month, every couple of weeks, there's a new video kind of going around where these situations are happening. They're so disturbing because sometimes the police officer is approaching guns drawn. Sometimes the person who is in the driver's seat or walking down the street is doing everything that you said. Hands are being visible. They're asking permission. They're saying, I have no weapons, or they're saying, I have a weapon. However, I also have a permit. I'm licensed to carry. And we see that that's still not enough.
That's right.
So again, like it's infuriating because I just feel like we don't have enough information, or we have misinformation, or we're doing what we feel is kind of abiding by the rules, and that still isn't good enough.
Well, it isn't, and that's when we got to get some of these people prosecuted. I mean, that's the bottom line.
So we do know that 99% of these officers, nothing happens.
That's right.
Nothing
I just saw a
happens.
story in January where in Arkansas, I put this on my Facebook, in Arkansas, a cop shot a Chihuahua. And that cop was fired
You saw that
within 24 hours. And we almost never even see firing, not even prosecution.
Right.
We rarely even see firing, let alone prosecution.
Suspension. I would take a suspension,
Yes.
or something.
They take them off the
That's right.
streets. They put them at a desk job, and
And they're still paid.
they're still paid. And a couple months later, it's
They're
out
right
of our
back. I mean, and so, it's the woman who shot and killed Terrence Crutcher in Oklahoma, she's back on the beat. And that's just commonplace now. Even Zimmerman, you ain't even got to be a cop. You can just be a random person
Right.
and say, I was
Right.
afraid. So, no, we know that. And that's where we have to, frankly, demand justice. These people need to be prosecuted. It's unacceptable. We have to have more civil action. So civil rights lawyers, we can bring civil actions against these people and try to recover. But we know it is. So I want to be clear. Even doing that, that's just to try to minimize the risk. But as long as we have white supremacy and racism, we're going to continue to be subject to this. I think it's critical for black people to organize and vote. In any community where we're in significant numbers, we need to be driving how we deal with these issues in those communities. So in cities where you have a large number of black and brown folks, that should be, you're not getting in the office if there's not going to be clear zero tolerance for the unreasonable shooting of unarmed people. So we start with that, and then other communities, because obviously we want to move around this country, particularly in in areas where we're not as in big numbers. Then we just got to use our national representatives to put pressure. We saw it in President Obama, Eric Holder, when he was Attorney General, he put consent decrees. So he would put consent decrees on police departments to try to to kind of micromanage how they would use force. We still have problems there. Like there isn't any perfect solution, but politics, organizing, and using our voice and then our political power to demand remedies is what we have to do.
Now, I know that, ironically, we have a caller. Just finished my statement. Ironically, the numbers have actually gone down. So let's get the call, then I want to come back to this.
Hi, caller.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to Gem Talk.
Thank you. It's Mike Tyree.
Hi, Mr. Tyree. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Very well, very well. So we have a very special guest on the phone, Michael Tyree. He is a former police officer, and he is the current owner of Thick Skin.
Creator.
Excuse me.
He is the owner, but
he's the creator. He's the visionary behind.
Yes.
Yes. And he is going to actually add some incredible insight to this conversation that we are having with Shavar Jeffries. So, Mike Tyree, thank you for joining us. Can you please tell us a little bit about what you created and then the reason why you created it?
Well, I created a fashion-forward, non-threatening way for the innocent to protect themselves without taking a life. So I created pretty much a bullet-resistant vest that you could wear. Like yesterday, I was in Barnes & Nobles, had a little meeting in Barnes & Nobles, and I wore my tuxedo vest in there, and I was around, plenty of older Southern people, you know what I mean, where there was no threat, there was no problem. No one in there knew I had a bulletproof vest on, but I was protected. And basically, I think that's really the focus on thick skin because the vests that were out prior to my company pretty much say, I've been shot at, who's going to shoot at me next? Or say, I'm at war and I have a problem and I'm upset. And so I had to figure out a way where a vest to protect yourself didn't say anything. It just was part of life. And that's how it started.
Very nice. So we have some images up here where they can see your designs. And I mean, it really does look like everyday wear. It doesn't look like anything that would put out the assumption that you are in danger of being shot at.
Right. Or that you think that you're in danger of being shot at.
Right, or that you feel like you're in danger. Now, what's the concept behind it? What was the idea? What caused you to say, I know that there is a need for this?
Well, I was on a train. I was doing a little undercover work while I was a police officer on the train. And at the time, I want to say there was a shooting on the train in the UK somewhere. And I just started to doze off into this daydream while on a train where I kind of said to myself, if someone came and shooting in this train, how would I respond and what do I think would happen? And when I came to the conclusion, I said, okay, so my gun is up under my pants and shirt and it's hidden. So it's going to take me at least 4 to 3 seconds because I'm sitting down too to get a pistol out and actually, put some bullets down range at the target. And before that happens, those 3 seconds, the person's just coming in shooting. So 2 to 3 people are gonna get shot before I can even do anything. And I said, I hope it's me because I'm the only one that can take a bullet right now because I have a vest on under my clothes. And I said, man, if we're the only ones getting shot, and at the time, there was a train full of, black people. I'm sorry. So I'm like, if we're the only ones being victimized in this light right now, why wouldn't we have something to protect ourselves like I'm wearing right now?
Right.
That would make sense.
Now,
And I said, clearly, it's got to be illegal. Even as an officer, I never thought about it. So I was like, it's got to be illegal. So I do my research, and I realize it's protected by an amendment just like pistols are. The Second Amendment, which is the right to protect yourself. And I said, so why wouldn't – I was like, duh, because it looks crazy. You know what I mean? So it looks so crazy that it brings attention to you. So if you want to be – we're hassled already for wearing a hoodie. Imagine wearing a vest everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I said, man, if I could find a way to combine fashion and tactics, like I think I can pull something off. Because at the end of the day, my life I've gone through, ups and downs just like everybody else, just trying to figure out this maze of what do I want to do and why and how do people want me to do it? Because there's two different ways. Like there's things we want to do, but then there's also the highest level of consciousness is you can tell how other people want you to do what you can do, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You have to be accepted by your people as far as your expression if you really want to do something because, we're all here together type thing, So it took me a long time to even, get to that point. And so I was like, man, if I would have died 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this would have never happened. So the biggest thing about reaching your full potential is just staying alive. Right. And so that's where the slogan, thick skin, we believe in protecting your most important investment, and that's yourself. That's how it happened.
Powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Have you received, I know you're no longer a active police officer.
No, I'm not.
Have you received, backlash, for lack of a better word, for coming up and creating this kind of, answer to everything that's going on?
You know, glad you asked that question. I haven't received backlash in my face. But you know, other police officers have spoken, you know, while I was still policing, because I never was the talkative type as far as gossiping. It's really not my thing. So, so I got a lot of friends that were police officers that would tell me like, yo, you know what's crazy? So-and-so be all in your face, but behind your back, da-da-da-da. And they have definitely talked about it, you know, basically saying, you know, it would never work, you know, what is stupid, like, you know, who's going to wear a vest? And, you know, a lot of times it starts with, you know, someone from another race. And then, you know, my brothers hop on that bandwagon. That's basically how it goes. But what's so crazy was that the same people that were talking about me were texting my phone maybe 6 months after I heard they were talking. Like, yo, man, this thing's great. Like, you know, I'm trying to buy one. Could you make one like this?
Right.
Yeah, so I don't even.
You're going to have guys wearing them to prom soon.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't even take that stuff personal at all. And when I first really started, you know, everybody told me, and this was friends, it's not them talking, you know, bad. They were just like, yo, you know, you're going to receive some backlash, you know, hence he's like, yo, they're going to try to come get you. And I told them, I said, that's your problem. I said, you scared of the boogeyman. I said, I'm not scared of the boogeyman. Who are you talking about? He's like, well, you know that. No, I don't know them. I don't know they. I don't speak in those terms. I speak in specifics. I'm scared of names. I'm not scared of groups of people I've never heard of. I'm not scared of the boogeyman. You know, you're scared of the dark, like type person. So that wasn't going to stop me either. And then, you know, once they realized, like, yeah, well, let's say, yeah, you know, Tyree's crazy. Like, it's like, I'm not crazy. It's just that if I'm not fulfilling myself, then I don't want to be here anyway. So
and
it's a win-win situation for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're in a situation, like, you know what happens on the street, like you know what happens,
Right.
you know, a lot more than we do. You
Right.
know, we
Right.
see the videos and we see, I mean, clearly we can see what's happening, but there's such a bigger picture, you know, than like what Shavar was talking about, that's happening in those 8 to 12 minutes or however long. You know, in my mind, I kind of wrote down like what the MO, for lack of a better word, because now I think I'm a police officer attorney. So, but the MO, right?
Wana's been doing a lot of research preparing for this show, y'all.
Yeah, because, you know, like, this really, like, it scares me. I mean, you know, not that it doesn't, it scares me. I have, you know, I have an 11-year-old grandson that, you know, that walks home from school.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a time when I wouldn't even think twice about it.
Right.
But now, I'm afraid. And I don't remember being afraid just all the time,
right,
or being nervous. So they're unarmed, they're black, they're usually minor infractions, but there's excessive shooting. Like,
right.
It's excessive. It's not like it's a frenzy. It's like they're not in control of what's happening. So, you know, where's their psychological, like what's going on with that? Because if I feel threatened and I'm a trained officer, right, then I know how to position myself. I should know how to do that
and de-escalate.
Right. These black men that are getting shot, it's excessive. And they're usually fleeing. It's usually for minor infractions. And then over here you have the mass shooter who just shot up a church. And the headline is, the suspect was apprehended, as opposed to we killed.
Right.
The headline is completely different. So, you know, so Michael, from, you know, coming, like, what's happening there? Like, what, because the other thing is that we you know, we always want to let the police know that we got rights.
Right.
Well, that's a loaded question. If you can handle that,
right? That we got, that we have rights, and can we talk a little bit about that to help people kind of understand really what's going on in the streets in those 8 to 12 minutes?
So first and foremost, I just want to say everything that I'm going to say is from me being in the streets, almost 10 years and witnessing it for myself and coming to my conclusion on what the problem is, from being a young black youth from New Jersey, being stopped for no reason by unmarked cars, and my escort torn apart, and not finding anything, and then realizing that I shouldn't even, as I became police, or I shouldn't even have stopped for unmarked car, because it's against the law to have a traffic stop with an unmarked car, because I don't know who the hell it is, right? So I'm taking it from I've been the victim, I've been on the other side of the fence where I was enforcing laws, and this is just my conclusion. So if people disagree, that's just what it is. So going into it, so when you talk about fear, you're scared now. The only reason you're scared is because you know more now, right? Media allows us to be so much more informed. Just like it's easier, I won't say easier, but it's a lot more easily access to become an entrepreneur, because you have so many resources to increase your knowledge of whatever you're trying to do. And as far as police brutality, as far as inner city crimes, as far as domestic violence, we just know more about it. Nothing has changed. It might even be better. You just didn't know. Now we know, because it's not the news you're watching and getting that information. You're literally getting it from someone on the scene that posted it, and then it went viral.
Yeah.
So the news, exactly. So they can't give you just what they want to feed you anymore. You're getting whatever you want to get. You get what I'm saying? So that is where that fear comes from. Now, so nothing has changed. Basically, it's actually getting better. Okay, because the police officers have body cameras. There's also cameras in the car. Now they got cell phones where people are taping. So I want you to really realize that you have a right to be scared, but this is why you're scared. Because if I'm telling you it got better, imagine what it was. Right. It's unbelievable. Right. So now, let's talk about the rights. Let's just get right into it. So, an unarmed black person has their rights taken from them on the street, and they say like a illegal stop and frisk. So basically, if you're walking down the street, I'm an officer. I'm like, hey, stop right there. Let me see some ID. Right? That's an illegal stop and frisk, because basically I want to see if you have any weapons on you. Now, when you stop and frisk, you got to have basically probable cause, like reasonable suspicion, articulable reasonable suspicion why I stopped you. Right? So all of that is the rights, but that's the right that you can enforce when you have someone who can hold the officer accountable. So the only people that hold officers accountable is judges, lawyers, right? And that all happens in the court. So if you're on the street, it's you and an officer, what rights do you really have? None. Right. You have none, unfortunately, because the rights are not. That's why when you hear somebody say, I have rights, that means to an officer, you don't know anything.
That's very disturbing.
It is very disturbing, but I think it's so
Very
important,
disturbing.
Michael, because that could be the one thing that
Right,
escalates
right.
the situation when the person is stopped is going to say, "I have my rights,"
And it's telling because
and
you're
it's
giving
telling.
yourself away.
And the
'Cause if
officer
you did
is like,
giving
"Yeah,
yourself
but you
away.
don't."
right, then you would
Right.
know that
And
in
this
that
is-
situation you don't have rights.
Right.
Right. And this is from a FBI agent that trained me through the academy. If I tell too much about his story, then people will know who I'm talking about. So I'm going to just say he told me the most power a human being can have is a police officer, period. And I said, why you say that, right? He's like, you was an FBI sergeant. How the hell, right? He said, when I wanted to put cuffs and take somebody's freedom, I had to get at least 3 papers signed. My judge, warrant, I got to have the whole start to finish of a report done before I can go kick in your door, put you in cuffs. As a police officer, I wake up, put my badge and gun on, walk out in the street, look at you and say, you know what? I don't like how he crossed the street. Let's put him in cuffs.
And take him in.
And take him in.
And
work
what's
out
even
the
more
paperwork
disturbing is
later.
that Shavar is over here shaking his head in agreement.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Because it's a
That's
fact.
exactly how it goes.
It's a
That's how
fact.
it goes.
It's real.
Because this is what you say. This is what happens on the street. I ain't do nothing. I swear I ain't do nothing. I ain't take nothing. I don't. Sir, you fit the description. We got to take you in. Da-da-da. Don't resist. Don't resist. Here comes the fight. Oh, he's got to go. Bow. Done.
That wasn't even 8 minutes, Shavar.
Oh, I know.
Right,
That was 8
right.
seconds.
That was 8 seconds. So
Right.
so
That's how
Michael,
quick it happened.
if you had an alternative, and I know
Yes.
it's nothing is written in stone, but because when we're in a situation like that, I think just from a human perspective, just naturally, like we're going to feel the need to say something in our defense. So as opposed to the trying to do the whole I have rights, because now that's so informative, and it really makes you think about the Miranda rights, because
Right.
they tell you have the
Right.
right to remain silent and you have the right to an attorney. That's it.
Those are your rights.
And that's all
Yo,
they tell
if
you
you-
on the street.
And this is what I'm going to say. If you get to that point, that means you're in cuffs and in the back of a police car.
Right.
You should thank your lucky stars.
Right, that you hear, if you hear them, right, wow.
Your
So-
only leverage in this life is your life. You understand? Like, if you're not here, you have no leverage. It's over.
So I just
have-
want to stop you there. I just want to break that down for a moment. So it doesn't matter the video footage that so-and-so took that was in the passenger seat, or a bystander walking down the street. The leverage that you have is not the footage. It is you physically being alive to testify for yourself.
Not even testify, right? It's even deeper than that. It is if you have footage about what happened, that's fine. Who's going to, like, the brother that got shot and his daughter was in the back seat and his girlfriend taped the whole
Yes.
thing and died,
Lando
right?
Castillo.
Yep.
All right. He is gone. He cannot reap the benefits
Right.
of the mistake that the officer made. Right. So now that he is alive, if he was alive, and now he's got this settlement, right? Whether he got shot
Civil
or not,
rights.
That's right.
now he's able to change his daughter's life, his girl's life, right? Now he's able to live to his full potential, because we are so we're so conditioned as though I'm speaking about a man that is really me, that got shot in front of his daughter like it was some lizard that I accidentally stepped on.
Right.
This man has memories. This man has cried by himself. This man had his own demons. This man was trying to figure out his life,
Right.
period. And then you stopped it,
Right.
right? who knows what happens? Honestly, who knows what happens after this dimension?
Yeah.
But I do know it's 400 trillion to 1 for you to even get here, as far as a sperm count.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So I know this
Yeah.
has to be special.
I tell my students that all the time.
Right.
Yes. If you've made it this far,
Right.
you are here
Yes.
with a purpose.
That's right.
Absolutely.
You got to do something.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? You got to do something. So basically, and I tell, and this is just, we're literally talking about the problems of police and civilians. This is the problem. There's a lot of good things going on too, but this is, I feel, we're talking about how to diffuse the situation.
Right.
Right.
Now, because if a police officer is not equipped to defuse the situation, it is your obligation to diffuse the situation,
Yep,
right?
that's
because
what- yep.
you have to go home
Right.
one day, period. So if he's not diffusing it, we gonna have to, right? So what you don't say is, "Hey man, don't touch me. I know my rights." That's dead. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Right.
Right.
Don't do that.
Nobody
Don't
do
do
that. Okay.
Don't do that. What you say is, officer, I don't care if somebody's officer, my brother, my cousin, my neighbor is an officer. I understand. I'm going to give you your space so you can conduct whatever you need to conduct, and whatever you need from me, you just let me know. And he says something like, "Well, I need you to put your phone away." Sir, I'm just trying to record this because it's on my phone. Well, I told you, and turn your phone off because you've got everything you need to have. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He has now told you, turn your phone off. He's got aggressive with you. Turn that thing off.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And now walk away and just call the attorney. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to deal with this officer on the street. That's his world.
Amen.
Right.
Attorneys go to jail. Judges go to jail. Right? Fortune 500 company CEOs go to jail.
Right.
And all of that happens from a police officer.
That's so key. That's their world. And I
That's
don't
their
think
world.
that, yeah, and I've never, and again, I'm not watching it all the time and all that, but I've never heard anyone say that.
No. Not at all.
What I've heard is the opposite. Let the officer know that you have their right. But the reality is that you don't. It's their world. You need to make it from the street to Shavar.
Right.
Like we need to go from the street to Shavar,
To the attorney.
To the attorney,
Yeah.
and it could even be in their court of law, the Supreme Court or whatever. We know what happens there, so it is the civil rights attorney. It is where you are able to leave that situation and now go and fight for your civil rights in a whole different court.
Right.
Because the Supreme Court, it's still them. It's the prosecutors with them.
So what about our average, we all grew up in the same area, Essex County. I now live in Hudson County, and I can name maybe 3 people that I know personally who have an attorney. I don't know anybody else who has an attorney on speed dial or who even knows one in the family. So what happens to our young men who, like, I understand the concept, but like, then who do they really call, or is there a number or a resource where they can find one, like, quickly?
Right.
Would it be the Family Justice Center?
Well, for these issues, you could call the Family Justice Center. You could call Seton Hall Center for Social Justice. That's where I used to work, and they provide pro bono free lawyers to support people in this situation. ACLU in New Jersey, they did work in this area that led to the consent decree in Newark, and they continue to represent individuals. You can call Lowenstein Sandler. That's where I work. We have a pro bono unit. We can't represent everybody, but we represent our share. You can call me. I mean, I can't represent everybody, but I can represent my share. But yeah, part of the challenge, not everyone has access to a lawyer, and so that's an inequity too. But those are some resources we have in Northern New Jersey to support folks.
So, Mike, while I still have you on the line, what is one or two key things that you can say that we should be either telling our kids or we should be telling our students in the event that they are approached by a police officer and they're not doing anything wrong in their mind. They're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
How should they interact, or how should they react?
Okay, so what I do, and what I have a daughter as well, and what I will teach her is that if I was stopped by anybody, first of all, there's a reason they stopped me, whether I like the reason or not. So how I would behave is the same way I would behave if I walked into if I was a Crip and I walked into a Blood neighborhood by accident and I got stopped by a Blood and they say, "Hey, bro, you know where you at?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I'm lost." I would play the humble role.
Okay.
I would play a role as to, "I apologize. What do you need from me?" "Hey, bro, you ain't supposed to be around here." That's fine, right? So I would always play not the I know my rights. It's like, "Yes, officer, how can I help you?" Right? Because I was stopped for a reason.
And they believe the reason. They believe it.
Yes, yes, and it's right. So when I was in office.
Oh, did we lose him?
Michael?
Oh, we lost him. Okay, well, that was great.
Listen,
He was right on point.
Even that right there, and just the fact that he just sat and reinforced everything that you said, you stated starting off this conversation. And any of our young listeners who are kind of watching or listening right now, I just want to reinforce, because at that age, if we can all kind of think back to when we were teens, early 20s, and that mouthiness, that sense of entitlement that I think that we all kind of have at some point in our life until we learn better and evolve. It is very difficult to, when you're approached by someone who is a stranger, regardless of stature, to humble yourself in those scenarios. And so it is really important that we teach our kids, or I'm speaking directly to the kids, that if you are in those situations, that is not the time to be big and bad.
Right.
That ain't it.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And especially because, like Michael said, there's a reason why. And so that person that's stopping you is already, as far as they're concerned, it's a done deal. You've done something wrong, and that's why I've stopped you. So to try to convince them otherwise is not. It's just
Yeah.
I like Michael's frame, that street world, that's the cops world.
That's the cops world.
And, I think it's important for our young people to know, we're not saying you don't use your voice. We got to use your voice in the right venue and in the right context, right? It's situational. When we're in that world, that ain't your world. We ain't going to win that right there.
Right.
And you don't need to win it right there, because ain't nothing you can win in that encounter.
That's right.
But in this legal world, and then in the political world, in the communications world, when we raise our voice, we can win some things there. But we got to get you there, as Michael said. And if you get killed there, then we've lost that opportunity.
Yes, which is another reason why GEM was officially started, for effective communication. So check out my website, girlsembracingmanifestations.com. Thank you, Mr. Engineer, for that. But yes, we got about 5 minutes left. But I wanted to ask you quickly before we wrap up, the whole idea behind videoing these events. I saw in the news that they're trying to make it easier for police officers to confiscate the cell phones or the footage. Is it legal?
It's very legal. Some states now are trying to look at this, but you have a First Amendment right to do that. I'd probably recommend ways to do it where the cop can't see it. Because that can also trigger things in that encounter.
Okay.
So if there's a way, there's even I read there's a way to program Siri, or if you use Google, where you can, as you're being stopped, Siri, I'm about to be stopped, and it'll automatically kick in the recorder where you ain't got to do anything. So you're not not showing it to them, because then that can trigger things. But if it's just sitting there, and they may just think it's your navigation, but if it's actually recording the encounter, that's good, because they also misrepresent what's happened in the encounter as well. So if you can get footage, and I want to hear more from Michael and the experts. My instinct, though, is you don't want to flash that in their face, given how that can trigger them, and that can cause them to it can escalate things in a way that it shouldn't, but it might, and we got to get out of that encounter.
Right. And I think to Michael's point, the video along with yourself,
that's right,
is gonna go.
That's right.
a long way, which is why
Yeah.
the videos don't work, because the victims are not there.
No longer here.
They're no longer here. Fran, just remind them to go to Thick Skin.
Yes, absolutely. And the
thickskin.com.
website is on the YouTube. If you're watching right there, wrong side. There,
Over there.
boom.
There you go.
Boom,
Right
boom,
there.
boom, boom.
There you go.
Go ahead. Thickskin.com, and you'll be able to see all of Michael Tyree's creations.
Yeah, they're
all
best,
of his
and
creations.
he makes them himself.
Yes.
Yeah,
And if
he
I'm
makes
not
them
mistaken,
himself.
it was featured in New York Fashion Week.
Yes.
Yes. So make sure you guys go and check that out.
Please go and check that out.
And we will be continuing this conversation. There's a lot to cover, and this is exactly why this is part 1 of 2. So we will be finishing this conversation on Friday, July 5th
Yes, on
at
July
6
5th.
p.m.
Yes.
Make sure you guys follow our Instagrams so that we can set you up with a friendly little reminder to tune in. You can follow me at Girls Embracing Manifestation. And then you can also follow on Wanda
At Uniquely Wanda on IG and Wanda Edwards on Facebook.
Yes, and Shavar Jeffries, thank you so
Thank
much.
you
My
so
pleasure.
much,
For being
Shavar.
here
Thank you for
today.
having
We
me. It's been a
really,
pleasure.
really appreciate the insight. So everybody out there, just make sure that you protect yourself, protect your kids, and don't forget to follow. Oh, it's subscribe.
Yes, subscribe, please. And be
Subscribe.
humble. Take good care of yourself.
Yes. Get home tonight.